Mr. Hicks?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. So obviously, Ms. Morgan, right now you're muted, but I'm sure you're back on.
Yes, sir.
All right. The court calls case number 652-458, State versus Garrett Hughes McKinney. Present with him on the record is Bob Hicks, his attorney. Mr. McKinney, would you please raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear that in this proceeding, the information and responses that you submit will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. You may put your hand down. Mr. McKinney, before we proceed, I need to talk to you. This is being recorded by Ms. Kaylin Rivera, my certified court reporter. I want to remind you that there are several, in fact, I'll discuss 5 constitutional rights and protections that you have. The first one I want to discuss with you is the right to remain silent. That means that you do not have to, you cannot be compelled to make a statement, answer questions, or to submit written paperwork that has your signature, especially any papers that admit or confess to wrongdoing. That's called the right to remain silent. Do you understand you have that right?
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you. The second right that I want to discuss is the right to a jury trial. That is a right wherein you and your attorney and the state attorneys would select from a jury panel, a random jury panel, usually anywhere from 24 to 30 people. From there, you would select 6 people who would hear the evidence, watch the proceedings, look at the testimony and materials, and decide. They would decide, if you chose to, whether you're guilty or not guilty. It's called the right to a jury trial. You understand you have that right?
Your Honor.
There's also another right called the right to confront your accusers or witnesses. In that right, you and your attorney, together you have the right to question, cross-examine, or challenge any witness who would testify in your trial if you so chose. Do you understand that?
Your Honor.
All right. There's also called a right to appeal. When the dust settles, when all is said and done in this proceeding, you and your attorney, or you by yourself, or your attorney by himself, could demand that a higher court review the official record, the material, the testimony, the evidence in this case. That right of appeal, you would ask or demand that a higher court review all of that, and the higher court would decide whatever challenge you wanted to make. That's called the right of appeal. Do you understand you have that right?
Yes, Your Honor.
And finally, the 5th thing I want to discuss is that you and the state individually, so there's 2 different people or entities, have the right to demand a public courtroom proceeding. Because of the COVID pandemic, we're not doing those at this time. We're trying to start some, but in your case, you have consented, I believe, to handle this by video conference. This is being streamed on the YouTube, which makes it public in the sense that anyone can tune in and watch and hear and see what's going on. In this particular case, both you and the state have the right to make this demand, and it is my impression, and we'll see it momentarily, that both have decided to do this by video conference. But that is your right to demand this proceeding be done in open public courtroom. Do you understand you have that right?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. Now, I'm going to show you some documents in this plea. Those documents all start off, well, almost all the documents start off with what I call identifying information. If you notice the one that's shown to you right now, that document starts off at the top with the case number. The case number is 652458. It says the state of Texas versus Garrett Hughes McKinney in County Court at Law Number 5, Garrett County, Texas. That will be repeated on almost every one of the documents, each individual document that you see. Now, after that information, you have a title for the document itself. In this case, this is called Defendant's Consent to Video Conference. This one appears to have your signature. Is that your signature on there?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, you and Mr. Hicks have agreed to do this by video conference. Is that true?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. Now, the next document you'll be shown is the defendant's waiver of constitutional rights and court's admonition. You'll notice at the top, again, it's got the repetition of the identifying information. Then the title, and by the way, the titles are all in bold print, all capitals. The title of this one is Defendant's Waiver of Constitutional Rights and Court's Admonitions. It starts off with 3 sentences separated, almost like separate paragraphs. The first one says, you don't need me to read to you the official accusing documents, because the second one says, I know what I'm charged with, driving while intoxicated. Then the third sentence says what, Mr. McKinney? Can you read that to me?
Yes. I am mentally.
No, you're in the wrong place. Above at the top, it starts off with 3 individual sentences, right below the title. The third sentence starts off, in this cause I hereby. Do you see that?
Yeah, in this case, I hereby enter a plea of
nolo contendere.
nolo contendere to the following allegations: obstruction of highway.
All right. Is that true? Are you going to enter a plea of nolo contendere on this charge?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. I will point out to you that you were originally charged with driving while intoxicated, but your attorney has worked out a very beneficial deal for you in that you're no longer charged with DWI. You're now going to be charged with obstruction of a highway, and that is in a separate category. I'll point that out to you momentarily. Mr. Hicks, this document is then divided into 15 numbered separate portions or divisions. Is that correct?
Yes, Your Honor, it is.
Did you review those carefully with your client?
Pretty much.
Pretty much.
Well, I had a problem seeing the documents, Your Honor, so I had to do it kind of from memory.
All right, let's back it up, Patty. Or who's sharing that? Caitlin?
Yes, sir.
All right. The rest of this is divided into 15 portions. Number 1, and they're individually marked. Number 1 talks about the range of punishment. What's the punishment you can get for obstruction? Well, if you look at, there's a vertical stack of boxes, and each box has a different description of a particular punishment. At the very top is DWI first. You can be punished by a fine from $0 to $2,000 and jail from a minimum 72 hours to 180 days in jail. Obstruction of a highway is a different type. It's Class B. And the punishment for that is a fine $0 to $2,000 and in jail 0 days to 180 days jail. It's a separate type of punishment. Is that correct? Do you see that, sir?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. The item number 2, I'm going to review some of these with you to make sure that you've seen them. Number 2 says, I understand I have a right to a jury trial, a right to cross-examine witnesses, and a right to remain silent. Did you see that?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. Number 3 talks about mental health. Have you ever had any mental health problems or issues?
No, Your Honor.
Okay. Number 4 talks about the plea of nolo contendere. Did you see and understand what that says?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. Number 6, it's an interesting thing that you should be aware of. As the judge, I have the authority and responsibility to look at the deal you've made with the state and say, yes, I accept that, or no, I don't accept it. That's my job. That's part of what I have to do. I can also give you any punishment in the range of punishment we talked about a while ago, the Class B, even if it's heavier than what you agreed to. However, if I reject your deal, or if I give you a punishment that's heavier than what you agreed to, in either of those two cases, the law would allow you to start all over again. And nothing that you've said or signed up till now would be used against you. Is that clear?
Your Honor.
All right. And again, just for the record, have you ever been involved in the sex offender registration program?
No, Your Honor.
All right. Where were you born, sir?
Denver, Colorado.
All right. That the papers in this case will reflect that you are a U.S. citizen. Do you have any questions about the document we just finished, the ones that divided into 15 parts?
No, Your Honor.
All right. The document you're being shown now is a document wherein I certify to you that you do not have a right of appeal. The title of the document is Trial Court Certification of Defendant's Right of Appeal. I discussed with you a while ago what that right is. That is to have a higher court review the whole process. There are a vertical stack of boxes. Again, those boxes each have a different, separate discussion about the right of appeal. If you look at the document, the fifth box, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it says, and this is myself as the judge certifying, this is a plea bargain case. And because, and I'll just paraphrase, and because it's a plea bargain, the defendant has no right of appeal. Was that explained to you in reviewing this document?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, and you have signed it, and so has Mr. Hicks. Is that correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. Now, the document in front of you now is a document with the same identifying information. This one says application for deferred adjudication. Let's talk about that, because Mr. Hicks not only got you this case reduced from DWI to obstruction, he also got you deferred adjudication. Now, ordinarily, a plea of no contest, nolo contendere, is taken by this court as a guilty plea, and as such, a guilty plea, a nolo contendere, is sufficient for me to find you guilty and punish you accordingly. Do you understand that?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. Now, on deferred adjudication, the beauty of this, first of all, even though you're pleading nolo contendere, essentially a plea of guilty, I will not find you guilty. Instead, I will put you on deferred adjudication. Those are big words for saying I'll postpone whether I find you guilty or not. And what's going to motivate that? If you live up to 100%, and I repeat that for you and for your dad that's there, if you live up to 100% of the conditions of supervision, then the case winds up getting dismissed and you've never been convicted even of obstruction of a highway. It is very, very important and very, very beneficial to you under the circumstances. Now, what are those conditions? The conditions of supervision are going to be repeated in these documents, but ultimately they will be read to you. You will sign them. And at that point, you will have a copy placed in your hands. Is that clear?
Yes, Your Honor.
Now let's be clear about something else. If you fail or refuse to live up to each of the conditions, all 100%, then the state can ask me to give you official notice, bring you in for a hearing. And if the evidence is sufficient in my mind, then I can go ahead and convict you forever. A conviction that would follow you the rest of your life of obstruction of a highway. The only way that would be undone or changed would be if the governor of Texas gave you a pardon for this charge. I don't know about you, but I couldn't even get him to do that, I assure you. But be aware, if that happens, if we wind up having a hearing because you messed up and you're, I enter a finding of guilt, a conviction, then you're looking at the entire range of punishment. Fine, 0 all the way to $2,000. Jail, 0 days to 180 days. Are you hearing what I'm saying?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, that's deferred adjudication. That's a written legal binding agreement. All right, now, what you're looking at here does not have the identifying information because the entire document is meant to identify you. We've got your name, address, phone number, everything. But some very critical material is left out. You're going to have to submit all of that. Are you employed?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, it says you're a student. Are you working for wages somewhere?
Yes, Your Honor.
Where are you working, sir?
I'm working at a car wash and then also at my mom's work.
At your mom's what?
KBK Design, interior design.
Okay. And what would be, okay, now we also need 3 people who will always find you. That can be your father, your mother, anybody else, okay? We need that. That's required. You're going to have to put that in here. What is your total income, weekly or monthly, that's going to have to be shown? We show wages. I prefer to say income. Did you hear me, sir?
Monthly, what do you clear?
Yes, Your Honor.
I want to know total. I don't necessarily want net because a lot of people define net differently. What is the total amount of money that you make in a month? And I'll just remind you, you're under oath, okay?
I don't know, you tell me. What do you think gross? You know, it's before taxes.
Total monthly income.
Around $1,000 a month, Your
How
Honor.
about it? Okay, and that's mainly because you're not full-time employed, you're a student and you make a
Yes,
little
Your
money here and there? All right, 1,000 a month. That's what is, that's on the record now. Okay, you are married, single, divorced?
Single.
Okay, that was not in there. I need the single. Do you have any children for whom you paid child support?
No, Your Honor.
Okay. You have you served in the military by any chance?
No, Your Honor.
And what kind of automobile do you have?
A Nissan Frontier,
Okay, what year?
2005.
All right. The color?
Dark gray.
Okie doke. I want you to fill all that out. You'll have to come to the offices of County Court 5 to do so. You're going to be ordered to do that anyway, because you're going to have to put your thumbprint on the documents involved here. There's some that the law requires you to put a thumbprint on. So now we're going to come up with another document. The document coming up before you is called a plea agreement. A simple way to say this is the deal that's being made on your charges. Again, identifying information, your name and the case number. The first 2 boxes will be legally marked. The first one says that you've been told and reminded you got a right to remain silent. The second box from your testimony would indicate that you are a U.S. citizen. Then the following section has 5 boxes stacked vertically. Each one has a declaration, a statement concerning your constitutional rights. Did you review those and did you understand them?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. Now, here's the part that's of significant interest to you. The state, you have a motion.
Yes, Your Honor, the state moves to amend the information to add count 2 obstruction, and the state moves to waive and abandon count 1 and proceed on count 2 obstruction.
All right. Mr. Hicks, does the defense waive the 10-day notice on amendment?
Absolutely, Your Honor. No, nor do we object to the amendment.
All right. There being no objection, the court grants the motion, and that bottom box will be marked for the record, indicating that he is no longer officially charged with DWI, but with obstruction that was done by amendment. Now, sir, to the charge of obstruction of a highway, how do you officially plead at this time?
Guilty.
No, nolo contendere.
Oh, yes.
Okay, this is why people have lawyers. This particular plea of nolo contendere, again, although it is accepted by the court as a guilty plea, there is a specific reason that protects your rights why it should be nolo contendere and not simply guilty. And the records here show that you're pleading nolo contendere. Is that correct, sir?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. If you continue to look at the documents, there is a little box that checked off. It says other. You are ordered to appear within 7 days of today in the court's offices, County Court Law Number 5 at the Justice Center, to have your thumbprint placed. It tells you that a specific law that requires it. Your thumbprint will be placed on the documents. Now, I find that there is sufficient evidence to find you guilty, including your own plea, but I do not find you guilty. I am honoring the agreement that's been made by you, and that is that you are granted 1 year deferred adjudication. You are fined $500. You will perform 48 hours of community service restitution. In addition, you must, in good faith, enroll in and complete the drug offender education program. Pardon my noise here. And you'll submit to a TAP evaluation and follow the recommendations. Do you have any questions about what I've just said?
No, Your Honor.
All right. Now, you are not sentenced to jail. There is a deferred adjudication. Your supervisory fee will be $43 a month.
Your Honor,
Ma'am,
I just wanted to note for the record, instead of ignition interlock, we had agreed on random UAs for 6 months.
say that again?
Instead of ignition interlock, we had agreed on random UAs for 6 months.
The reason behind that, Your Honor, is that this case involved a blood test which showed 0.00 alcohol and a very low level of THC metabolite. Smart Start, things like that would not have any effect whatsoever on someone who doesn't drink, nor would it detect somebody that was using drugs. So that's why we made the agreement to waive Smart Start and go with the drug education plan.
That's correct, Your Honor.
Mr. Hicks, as I mentioned a while ago, that's why people get lawyers to protect themselves. Mr. McKinney, as I mentioned earlier, your attorney has done good things for you. Don't waste that one opportunity that you're being given. Are you hearing me?
Yes, Your Honor.
How old are you, Mr. McKinney?
About to be 19.
Mr. McKinney, I want you to hear something. You're going to hear from me, and it's going to be said in front of your father. One of the worst things that could happen to you is that you get out and you're tanked up on alcohol or marijuana or some other drug, and you get out there. You didn't go out there to have an accident, but you wind up having an accident and killing an innocent person. You know how many years you could be placed in prison and probably would be? 20 years. That means that the very most beautiful part of your youth you'll be spending in prison. Now, I say this to you very seriously. That happens. Have you seen it in the paper and TV news and stuff? It happens. So I know that your mom and dad wouldn't want you to go through that. So I'm reminding you, learn that alcohol is not so wonderful. It's more important to have your life and your liberty and be around to love your family, mom and dad, and whoever you wind up being lucky enough to marry and raise a family with.
Yes, Your Honor.
Are you hearing what I'm saying to you?
I'm hearing everything that you're saying, Your Honor.
All right. I hope that it takes root. Do you have any questions at all concerning this entire proceeding and the documents?
So I'm going to college next or mid-August. And how would the drug test work with me? Because I'll be going back to Colorado.
You'll be in Colorado?
Yes, sir.
Arrangements will be made through the probation office. Now, there's a lady by the name of Maricela Luna. Before you leave the screen here, you will be placed in breakout with her. You're welcome to have your dad. And she will give you the details of all of this that's going to happen. If you need to make changes, or you need to be given the opportunity or the right to move and reside somewhere else, all of that can be done. Okay? And you'll do it through the probation office because they're my right hand that will supervise you. Is that understood?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. Any other question that you have? That's a good question because it's very important.
So that's in a year, what do we do?
In a year, what would we do? Like,
This is what Ms. Luna is going
Everything.
to talk to you. That's one of the things that they're going to be discussed. If you'll remember earlier, I said that the conditions of supervision are going to be read to you in detail, and you're going to sign them, and they're going to be put in your hands, a copy of them. You will know exactly what you're supposed to do and exactly what you're not supposed to do. Is that clear?
yes, Your Honor.
All right, now you're showing your intelligence right now by asking questions, and that's what you should do. Don't get all confused and messed up because you don't know the answer to a question. Ask it. Okay?
Okay.
All right. Father McKinney, and
Yes, Your Honor.
I don't mean that as a priest, but Mr. McKinney Senior, or whatever your name is, do you have questions that you would like to have asked right now?
No, I do not, Your Honor. I think our biggest concern was him because he's going to play a sport in college, and so I just wanted to know how we'd handle the testing.
That should be fairly easily done. If we have to make accommodations, the court is always willing to help, especially in his best interest. But there's three things I just want you to know. My first duty is my oath of office. My second duty is to protect the community, and my third duty is to try and help out the people that come before me that have been charged with crime. I am interested in this young man's welfare, as I'm sure you're more so as his father. So believe me, we'll try and do everything we can to help him and accommodate him so long as he helps himself. All right, Mr. Hicks, question.
Yes, Your Honor. Since he is going to be playing an NCAA sport, he is going to be drug tested throughout the course of the fall. So hopefully that will obviate some of the problem with doing UAs in Colorado.
All right. How frequently, do you have any idea at this point, Mr. McKinney, Garrett, how frequently you'll be drug tested?
No, Your Honor.
All
It's
right.
done randomly, Your Honor. That way people can't study for the tests.
Maricela Luna, do look into accommodating him. If he's being drug tested at the university, we don't need to be duplicating it, but we're going to make sure that it's done one way or the other.
Yes, Your Honor. In the case that he does, when he does move to Colorado, you can arrange for instead to stay here in Bexar County to move his case over to Colorado. So it'll be done through ICOTS, which would have to be accepted. Bexar County would transfer it, then the county in Colorado would have to accept the case.
Where are you going to be at in Colorado?
I'm going to be in Pueblo, Colorado.
Already.
CSU.
I'll explain that to him.
CSU is Colorado State.
There's two. So there's Colorado State, Fort Collins, and then
Fort Collins, I'm familiar
Colorado
with.
State, Pueblo.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll work it out. We'll get it together. like I said, we'll help you, but you got to help yourself, okay?
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
All right. Mr. Hicks, anything else?
No, sir, Your Honor. I believe we covered everything exhaustively.
All right. Ms. Morgan, questions?
Nothing from the state, Your Honor.
All right, then this will finish this hearing, except that Mr. McKinney, you will visit